Tell me how you're doing.
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good.
All is well. So
Yes. Well, and we'll continue to knock wood that hurricane season stays favorable for all of us.
we've
So,
made it through. It'll be a surprise if we have to deal with hurricanes moving forward. So we are very grateful that we did not have to look at an evacuation this year.
so it looks like you're the good luck charm. That's a great thing.
Okay, I'll take that.
Exactly. So listen, I don't know if David gave you a little context. Just one, first of all, that you are my first official interview. Do you know that?
No, I did not know that. Wow.
So I love
Thank
this
you.
idea. Yeah, well, listen, the whole concept is, I'd write the monthly column, all of that, which I enjoy doing, but it's also I really want folks both inside and outside the agency to have a chance to meet people in the agency, right? Especially now virtually, there are just so many more limitations on people connecting. So we figured these interviews might be a way just to highlight people that are doing the work. And so luckily your name came up first. Let's interview Beth.
Wow. Thank you.
No, thank you for saying yes. I appreciate it. So I do have the questions that we kind of worked around, but I'll modify a little bit just so you and I can have a conversation rather than feel
Okay.
like you're answering my official questions. But I would love to start with, let's start with your SDI and your motivational value system, because that's a conversation I always love to start and hear about that from your perspective.
Absolutely. My MVS is red blue. And so do you want me to tell you what that means? Okay. For me,
Yeah, sure.
red.
Yep.
Remember, a person red blue, and it really fits me to a T. I started out as blue, but really, when I did the ORO, the 2.0, then I tested out as red blue, and I need structure. I'm driven by policy, but people are very important to me, and I get my greatest, and this is so true about me, I get my greatest pleasure out of being able to mentor people and helping them grow and achieve what they want to achieve, or mentoring them so that they can achieve their goals. And so I feel like the red blue is a good fit for me. And, especially being in this RHA role, sometimes you've got to set the limits. You've got to make the statement so that we can, and we have to have processes in place so that we can achieve goals. So that the red part comes out on that. The structure that's necessary. So I think I'm a good combination of the two. Lean a little bit more on the people side. I tend to lean more that way as far as even when we're dealing with processes, the people part, it kind of is more outstanding for me. That's the greater focus I find,
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm not at all surprised by that, given our previous conversation. And, one of my reflections, Beth, last time when we had a chance to meet and have lunch, and I heard in your stories as you told me about your background, just always about this connection that you had to other people and the joy and fulfillment you got from seeing them grow and learn and lead and all of that. So that certainly that is not a surprise to me at all. So
Yes.
I love hearing that.
Good.
Yeah.
And then do you want me to tell you about my conflict sequence?
Yeah, tell me about that. Yeah, because yeah, tell me how that plays out for you.
I've learned a good bit about that in the last 6 months, I will have to say. So blue-green bracket, and then, in a red, And so what I have really in the past 6 months in particular paid attention to, well, what does this really mean about me when we've been in the middle of dealing with tough issues or tough situations, more often than not dealing with situations about people. And I find that, I do tend to migrate first with the blue towards the people, and looking otherwise, trying to see, well, what's really going on here, and so I find myself pausing And then, you know, the green part kicks in too. So there's this process that goes on. And, you know, I have discovered that that serves me very well most of the time to stay within those brackets. You know, I am typically not many things get me to the red, you know, fortunately, and even when I think about my whole life in the past, but particularly in the last 6 months, and most of the time we can resolve our conflicts before they get to an outburst, you know. But I will have to own that I have experienced red, that I have gone at least once and almost twice in the last 6 months to that red state, you know, which is, number one, it's very alarming when I get there, because typically they're not used to seeing me go there, you know, because I'm typically pretty much paused, you know, and I give people the chance to think through things, you know. And so a couple of times it wasn't pretty. They were shocked, you know, but it did get their attention when I got to that red point. I probably had a harder time dealing with it myself than they did, but I got their attention, and so and one of the things that actually happened is, I'm talking too much. I got their attention. I gave them a deadline. They met the deadline. So I think that finally established myself as who I was as the RHA here. But it also, I had to deal with, well, Lord, you did get to that point, you know, and how are you going to normalize yourself back out to being that, you know? What
And
I mean?
you have. I bet you have. Yes. Well,
I'm back
listen.
there.
Yeah, and let me just tell you what I love about that story, Beth. Thank you so much for sharing it. But what I love about it is you stepped into this big new role, right, as the RHA. And the whole reason for us making this investment in SDI is only, first and foremost, that we understand our own behaviors, right? So your ability to do that, let me look at this sequence and tell me what it means, but then also your willingness as a leader to reflect back on that, observe what the impact was, and then think about how might I use or not use, you know, those things in the future. So you're doing, you know, I feel like exactly what I hope people would do with the SDI. It's not so much about looking externally, it's about looking internally and saying, does this make me a better leader? And so I love this story. Thank you for sharing it. That's awesome. So let's pivot, and here's what I'd love to ask you. Tell me a little bit about your morning routine. One, first of all, whether you're a morning person, because I find that question is answered differently by people who are morning people and people who are not. And so tell me a little bit about who you are and how you love to start your day.
Well, I'm definitely a morning person, but I live in South Carolina, so my drive is almost an hour, not quite, almost an hour. So the alarm clock goes off at 5 o'clock, but I typically get up about 5:15, 5:20, and first thing I do, of course, is have a shower and then go have a little bit of breakfast, and then, of course, come back and take care of I have 2 cats, take care of the kitties, and then come back and finish up my grooming. And I find my friends have always told me that they leave me alone when I'm doing my grooming, because they think that that's when I'm kind of purposing myself for the day and patting, kind of nurturing myself through the process. So I'm sure there's some truth to that. But I also find myself free floating with my thoughts, and so that's where I sort of focus on, well, what are we going to do today? Where, you know, I start my structure in that process, although it's free floating, if that makes sense, you know, but it gets me prepared to get in the car and then get to work, you know, so
Yeah.
that's me, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love you hearing your friends' reflections about what they know about you. That's an awesome part of it. Well, tell us about this 1 hour drive that you have. What is that, peace and quiet, or you're listening to something? What do you do?
Yes, most of the time I'm listening to, I really thrive on positive motivation things. So I'm listening to, sometimes I listen to Joel Osteen. I find that he brings lots of positives to the table. I listen to other motivational speakers. And so to me, it's all about finding balance, you know, and being prepared, ready to walk in the door to deal with, number one, be the best I can be energy and emotional energy wise, you know. And so I find those things fill me up, you know, with, particularly focusing on positive things, you know, things about strength, things about courage, you know, those are the kind of things that get me ready for the day. So that, you know, it gets, by the time I get here, I feel like I'm pretty balanced and ready to go to the next schedule, you know?
Yeah, well, I love that. I think given the responsibilities you have as soon as you walk in that door, knowing that you're spending all that time sort of being prepared in a positive way. I think that's great role modeling. And I have the privilege of having seen your office and the way you've set your personal environment to be both welcoming to guests and I think soothing for you. So tell me what it's like when you first come to work. What happens as you cross the threshold and there you are at Savannah Hospital?
You know, first thing I do, of course, is we have our screenings because we're in the middle of COVID. But good morning, you know, I'm going to make sure I speak to everybody that I've passed as soon as I get out of the car to getting into the office. That I'm going to make sure I connect with people and just say good morning, how are you, you know, and then I come on in my office and get started for the day. I get the lights on and turn, you know, get the place opened up, you know, and then of course, you know, the first thing I'm going to do is get the computer up and just verify my schedule. I usually check the schedule the night before, so I'm pretty well purposed when I walk in the morning, but it's still, I go and check the schedule and just see, you know, get myself compartmentalized and programmed and ready to go for whatever is we have to deal with for the day, you know. And then, of course, our first meeting of the day is our morning COVID/administrative morning meeting. So. And
who do you meet with there? Is that your leadership team, or
yes,
is that shift change, or what do you do? Yeah.
Well, our leadership team, we meet with Dr. Bashara, Diane, the nurse executive, risk management, the director, Jonathan, the director of quality and risk, and our patient advocate, he's our patient advocate, but he's actually become the PI coordinator. And then most recently, we've had our rehab director has come in with us. Also, HR, when we Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we start the meetings with our COVID meeting. And we have our infection control nurses and our nurse practitioner, who's our lead, and we review all of the COVID, you know, things. We have a little agenda that we address everything, you know, what are the outliers, where are the risks, you know, how are we dealing with all of those things. We check to see if there are any policy changes, or sometimes we have questions that come from the teams about can they go off campus with the individuals for certain appointments, and so we approve all of those pieces. And then we go into the morning administrative report and we review the happenings in the past 24 hours with for all of the units. And of course, you know, the high risk areas, we spend more time on the incidents that have occurred, and that sometimes sets the theme for what we have to do next in the day. But I have found that I think this is a real positive. You know, we're kind of long-winded over here at the Reg, and I probably have a part to play in that. But you know, I find we do the review and we have the structure in place. But I find that people are staying around a little while, you know, and so that has turned into different things that we do. Yesterday we had it was totally impromptu, no planning whatsoever. But it ended up being a little bit of a team building session after the meeting. You know, it's not hard these days to get feeling emotionally drained because of some of the challenges we're dealing with. And so one of my direct reports told me that I didn't plan to do this, but I made sure they understood that I feel like we've got the best leaders that I could dare ask for, both at the senior leader and the middle leadership level. And he felt that was something that was really helped yesterday. It kind of helped us all kind of feel like, okay, we're glad we're here. We're glad we're doing the job. So, but most of the time, it's the administrative parts that we're dealing with in the problem areas that will tell us where we need to go next in that morning meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. So I think that's really helpful. right? So I think your partners across the hospital system, that will resonate for them. But I think those are really important insights for folks who work in community-based settings, right, that aren't on the 24/7 schedule, to know that, as soon as you come in the morning, the first thing you've got to do is hear what happened over the last 24 hours, and that might really reset your day based on, we all have an element of that, but I think it's particularly true in the hospitals, and how much every day is about really drilling down to very specific patient and risk and quality situations. So I appreciate you spelling that out. And of course, you came up the ranks there in Savannah, so you know what an RHA might want to hear.
That's the blessing is that I've been here for so many years in different positions. And so, yes, very good, for me to now that I'm in the role. So.
Yeah. So tell me this, I'd love to hear what's your favorite part of the workday and what's your most challenging part of the workday in the role that you play?
That's probably the most challenging question that you're giving me. In fact, I just processed one of my, Dr. Prather, who retired, but he came back part-time, stopped in my office right before this meeting. I said, that's my most challenging question here, because, I have this philosophy, and it's worked for me, but, and this is nothing that I've created. I've just identify with it. But I really do believe in the philosophy, if you love what you do, you don't really work. It doesn't feel like work. And I've had the gift all of my life. Everything I've done, I've loved what I've done. And so on a daily basis, I can't honestly say that there's anything that I dread. I sit in the administrative meetings. I dialogue with people in my office. I certainly, I will tell you, when we're having our budget meetings, that those are things that we've done very well here at this hospital. Those are a bit stressful for me, but that's not something we deal with every day. It's probably the most stressful thing for me, if I have to name an issue, and it doesn't happen every day, is if we have somebody that we're trying to hire, no matter what the position is, and we're having to negotiate a few more dollars to motivate that person to come to work for us. And how far can I go to take the risk to get this person hired, and still maintain being budget neutral? That's probably, I would say, my greatest challenge, if that makes sense. The fortune, though, is I do have a strong chief financial officer, and our HR director or manager. She just left my office. We collaborate with all of this together. In all honesty, Commissioner, last week I was encouraged, 2 weeks ago, I was encouraged to kind of step outside of the bounds, but not the budget. I knew what the budget numbers were, so I did, and it got approved when it went up to the state. Person wanted 1,000 more. I would not do that very often. That is just not. I'm going to maintain as close to the recommendation as I possibly can. But every now and then, I'm finding I'm going to have to go that extra step and take that risk. And that's probably my greatest challenge at this point.
Oh, I totally get that. And I think, thank you for naming such a very real world leadership challenge, right?
Yeah.
So, I appreciate that. What's your favorite part of the day?
Well, of course, people, being able to deal with people. And, when the RHAs do the new staff orientation component, and at the end of I begin and I end just to make people know that, when we focus on our values, I stop and take the time and actually speak about those values. And that's when I tell them that the expectation, if you've got a creative idea, I want you to come to my office and let me hear about that, and I make sure they're directed. If they have issues that need to be dealt with their manager, go there. But if they need to come and process something, if they have a suggestion of how we can improve processes, so I feel like opening my door and opening this office up for people to feel like they can come and talk, whether it's, I've even told them, if you need a minute in this office and I'll go leave so you can breathe, we'll do that. But, you know, it's that constant process of dealing with people. And, you know, I pay attention to, it's the nature of who I am. And, you know, it's not something one learns in a book, but if somebody's got something going on, typically that I'm close to, you know, a leadership or a manager, you can tell on their face something's not quite right. If they present in my office, then I'm going to say, do we need to talk? You know, how are you doing? You know, and I find that that's very fulfilling for me, you know, when people will actually come in. And even there are times that I cannot do anything but listen and help them repurpose their thoughts, you know, and put the negative where it needs to be. Those are the pieces that I appreciate the most, or I enjoy the most, I think. But I will tell you though, let me just go on. I love policy, you know, and if we have something that we have to follow policy on, and if we have to implement something both by policy or by standard, and we've actually been able to do that, we've gotten around to the table and we've all made the decision that this is where we need to go and this is how we're going to implement. I know that's a little wacky, but I get pleasure from feeling like we've achieved those kind of things too. So those would be the two things that make me the happiest.
Excellent. Yeah, very good. So what are you most proud of in your first 6 months? What's been particularly rewarding achievement for you?
Well, okay. So, you know, when I first moved into the role, everybody has been gracious. Everybody in this hospital and in the state system, I've received such accolades, and I'm so grateful for that. And so there's this high that goes with that, you know, and then the, you know, my team, they know me very well, but they know me in a different role, you know, and adjusting from the former RHA to me, you know, there were a couple of times along the way that I stated things a little more clearly that they didn't quite get, you know. And so the reality, number one, that we have issues in this hospital that we have got to deal with and that we have to correct, but also the reality that they were a little touch sleepy and on their own little way of doing things. And so getting their attention, you know, and being able to get their attention and let them know that was then, this is now, and reintegrating us together as a team together. And that's probably been it was what made me go red, you know, but then finding the balance there so that I could actually get everybody up and running and re-engaging with each other cohesively as a team. And please know that I have a great team of people. It's just that they've all been working in their own little way of doing things, and I want them to do their work independently. But we, as a team, will not be as effective if we don't work interdependently. So that was a challenge. It was short-lived. You know, I think one of the strengths that we have here at the table, and I'm comfortable with this part, is we can stay at the table. If we don't agree on something, we stay at the table until we get to a point of, okay, if we don't agree, it's okay, but let's go to policy, and this is what we have to do, you know. And so I can handle that. It's just that we have to get to that point. We're not going to go out into the corner and go do what we want to do. And so that's probably been my greatest challenge, but I think I have their attention now, so that's good.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, we don't have too much time left, so 2 questions for you, okay? First one is just if you want to share any goals for the coming year that are important to you, I'd love to hear that. And then second, I'd love to hear what is your greatest skill or talent outside of work, so people really get to know not just Beth the RHA, but Beth the person. So yeah, I'd love to hear answers to both of those.
Okay. Well, you know, I do have goals, and it has taken 6 months. You know, I started out with goals, but within these 6 months, I think I have my goals that I'm getting ready to officially, formally discuss in our meeting, our governing body meeting, but also with my leadership team here. Is we have just completed our safety culture leadership component of it, And we have identified some areas of improvement, trust being one of the major areas. And I want to re-engage our leadership team and middle managers with SDI, with, team building and building that trust through SDI. And so that's one of my major moves moving forward. And I feel real good about that, and I've actually tapped into somebody at the state office that's willing to help us with that. I really love Chavez Seeley, and she's a real team player if I've ever. And so that's one of my major goals. Of course, we've got the workplace violence process, Joint Commission-wide, that will go in full will be official as of January 2022. We've just established a team, and so we're going to get that up and running and get that implemented by January and start working through that process. It's a continuation of what Andy had. He wanted the development of our art therapy department, but in the meantime, we lost our art therapist. But what a peer specialist is, he does art groups. And so I want to beautify this organization, most particularly Building 1, with some of their artwork. And we've started. They brought their first bit of art, and we put it in Building 1. And so getting our hospital to be more reflective of who our individuals are and where their talents are is where I want to go with us and make note of that. Not just here in Building 1, but make sure everybody understands what we're doing. And then we received a grant for $5,000 and so we're getting ready to implement a small engine repair process through the work program and with maintenance. And so those are some of them. I have a couple of other goals, but those are the main ones that I've identified at this point. Of course, we'll have to make sure we're ready for Joint Commission 2022. So that, So.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Those are well stated red goals. So fabulous. Okay, so let's use our last couple of minutes for you to talk about something outside of work. What's something you love, your greatest skill, talent?
Well, I love people, and people love to come to my home. I love to decorate. My home is the core of who I am, and I make sure. I don't do as much these days, but I love to entertain, and I'm building up and everybody looks forward to this. In December, on Christmas Eve, I have a Christmas Eve open house for both family and friends and anybody that chooses to come by. One time I even had the UPS guys stop in and have a bite, And so I do like to cook, but entertaining and connecting with people, listening, decorating. I like to shop. I'm a shopper, I look a lot more than I shop, but those are the things that make me happy. I do walk 2 or 3 times a week, not nearly enough, but I do feel that it's important to keep some balance, some health balance there too.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Beth. And I have the privilege of knowing that anyone who comes to your office is going to see that you pay attention to the environment that you're in, and you really work hard to make a setting that is welcoming to people, comfortable, relaxing. And so the fact that you do that at home, that's no surprise to me. And I just love the way you bring this really core part of who you are, even to one of the most difficult jobs at DBHDD. And I think the Savannah Hospital is better for it. So thank you for bringing your unique set of skills right into this challenging job, and for taking the time to talk with us just a little bit about you, and for being our first interview. So, you'll always... You'll always have that as first interview that we did, and thank you, Beth. It's good to see you again, and I'm happy to know that it's not going to be long before we're going to be down to visit and get a chance to talk with you and your team. We're excited about that.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.